Hello, what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and for today's video we'll be looking at Skylords Reborn, and I'll be creating a PvE tier list for Shadow because it is the Shadow season. For this Shadow tier list, my previous one was back in 2022, so it has been about 4 years, and now there are a couple of new cards and new nerfs, new changes to some cards, and we'll take a look at which cards are the best for PvE and which cards are pretty much useless. But again, these are all my opinion. In any case, there are certain cards that I know that we will agree on, especially the very good cards and the very bad cards, I assume. So for my tier list over here, the S, A, B, C and D, and the main way that I'll be rating how good or how high these shadow cards are tiered is, of course, for its usefulness, how common these cards are used, how power efficient they are, and how useful they are. So there's many things that will affect it, and also if this card is an essential card that you must have for every PvE campaign run. Of course, if this card is a situational card, the highest I would rank would be a B tier, and for all those cards in the D tier, it will be cards that I would almost never use in any PvE scenario. So without further ado, let us dive straight into this video. For Altar of Chaos, because it is a very fun card, I usually just play it for fun. I don't really think that it's useful in any way, but if you play it and you want to have just some fun, use Cultist Master and get all the corps needed, the Altar of Chaos can be very strong. Only thing that it requires some form of like ground presence in order for it to be placed, and also when this bomb is placed, it cannot be destroyed by the enemy. If not, it will not explode. So with that all considered, I would say it is a fair C tier for Altar of Chaos. For Altar of Nihil, I think it is a D tier, even though I think previously it was already a D tier, but I still think currently it is a D tier because how this card works is that every single unit that is summoned would cost 85% less power, but they just die after 30 seconds. So it's almost the same as like a Lost Soul Revenant, or although probably in this case the units in general cost a lot lesser in power, but at the same time it's so limited in you just defending your base purely for defense. But for the shadow cards and for shadow deck, I really think there's a lot of better ways you can choose to defend, like building towers instead of summoning units and having them die after 30 seconds. Therefore, I think for Altar of Nihil, this will be a D tier. And next up is Shadow Pve. I think they're very good at pushing through the enemy fortress and enemy base, though they might be slightly easy to die because they lose health every couple of seconds, and they only gain quite a bit of health if you attack buildings. For unit, it really kind of depends if they deal a lot of damage or not, but mainly for Ashbone Pyro, if you are attacking buildings, there's a lot of buildings around the area and fewer units, that is a card that is very good to use. I would consider it to be at the highest tier of a situational card to use for Ashbone Pyro. And next up, we got Aura of Corruption, and I think this is very specific used, and I think for Aura of Corruption is very specific sometimes for speed runs, but it's very rarely used in a normal gameplay. Very situational card. I would put it around like a B or C tier, but honestly it is really a rare card to use for Aura of Corruption, and I've only seen it in speed runs where you can like sort of like summon units or like use spells where it kind of damages enemy in a specific area. And the thing is that I think Aura of Corruption only affects units and does not affect buildings, so it is not like a card that can be used to solve all of your problems. Therefore, I think it is just like a C tier for me. Next, Befallen's Curse. I honestly would place it between a C or a D tier, but I have to consider the deck limitations of 20 cards. In no scenario I would place Befallen's Curse onto my deck, even at a situational kind of scenario. So I'll put Befallen's Curse at a D tier because I would never ever have this card in my deck. Next is Blood Healing, and I would say Blood Healing is an S tier for shadow card because it heals a lot of your unit's health, and there's no limitation to how many units can be healed as long as it's within the radius of the unit where you cast Blood Healing on. The surrounding units will all be healed together, and the healing is really very good. So I would say S tier. and it is one of the strongest, or probably the strongest healing card in the game, except for of course nature. For Shadow, this is really a quite huge healing card to use, and I will always have this in my deck, especially if it's a pure Shadow. It's 100% I would have blood healing in my deck. Next up, I've got Church of Negation. It is a very situational card and rarely used as a pure Shadow, or I would say it is never used in the situation of a pure Shadow deck, because you can't really repair your buildings when it is disintegrating an enemy. So usually it's always accompanied with a Frost deck where you use Kobold Engineers or a couple of like repair spells like the Kobold Trick. Other than that, it is useless card in a pure Shadow deck, but mixed with a Frost deck, it is very good. So I'll put it as a C tier just because it is highly situational. Next is Corpse Explosion, and I'll also think that this is quite a situational card, but if you really like suiciding your troops and building all of these like corpse around the area, this is a very good card to have and deals quite a bit of damage. So depending on your playing style, I can see how this card can be a B tier, so I'll place it at a B tier. Personally, I would think that it's a C tier, but I really think this card has a lot of potential and it can be bumped up to a B tier. Next is Cultist Master, and Cultist Master is really the top essential card, especially if you are a beginner trying out Shadow decks, because it can be comboed with many different kind of like playing style, like using the Furnace of Flesh to get back your Void Power. It can also be combined with like Infected Tower to change your Nightcrawlers into like little pests. So there's a lot of different combinations where you can use Cultist Master's ability to get you an advantage in the game. So I would say that because it's useful and sort of like versatile, I will just give it an A tier for Cultist Master. Next is the Dark Maiden, and honestly I will also put it as an A tier. The reason why it's not an S tier is because it's a tier 2 card, and with relatively low health, it won't be very useful late game, but early game, tier 2, tier 3, it is very good, especially if you have Awaken it, you'll constantly heal your units. It is very useful. So therefore, A tier for the Dark Maiden. Next will be Dark Elf Assassins, and honestly I'll put it as a C tier. A lot of better cards to use for a tier 2 Shadow. I only put it as a C tier because it's not entirely useless, and if you're a new player, you can just have it in your deck. Next is Dark Mind, and for Dark Mind, I'm kind of uncertain how good this card is. On one hand, this card is like very paper, it will die so easily, but on the other hand, if it's used correctly on really big enemy units, the enemy unit can be used as a tool for you to get rid of other enemy units, because it is sort of like a single target frenetic assault for the Dark Mind. At this point, I'll put it just as the B tier, because I have not found much use case for this, even though I see a lot of potential, but I don't want to overrate it, so I will just keep it as a modest B tier. I just had fun playing this card, but other than that, if I don't really see how good this card can be synergized with like campaign gameplays, I will honestly bump it down to a C tier. But if I could find some strategies, or if you do know any, do let me know in the comments below, and I would think that it either deserves a B tier or even an A tier. And next up we got Death Ray. It's quite a good Shadow card to use, and it's a flying unit. It's very versatile. After upgrade 2, I think it moves a lot quicker, so it's a much better unit to run with your entire army. So I'll give it an A tier. Quite a good card. Next is Decomposer. I would say it's very situational. Honestly, Decomposer has gone down the tier list because of how Skylords Reborn has been nerfing Decomposer. Previously, you can decompose your teammates' units and you will get power directly from it, but now it is personally only be able to use on your own units, and I don't think that is as useful, and I've never seen this being played anymore. So honestly, I'll just put it down D tier. I would honestly never use this card at all. Next we got Devour, and Devour is an S tier for pure Shadow deck. Definitely a lot better than Shadow Worm, and it is hands down one of the best cards in Shadow, especially because of the playing style of Shadow, where there's a lot of high risk gameplay and a lot of your friendly units probably dying. This card over here would make use of a lot of your dying units and make it deal damage to your opponent. And when Devour gains the max life points gathered, is able to sort of eat or devour an enemy unit, and basically this enemy unit will respawn as your own unit for about 30 seconds. And this is similar to a temporary mind control, only that it is free to use if your Devour has enough corpse gathered. Therefore, everything Devour deserves an S tier. Very great card. You guys should use it if you have not, even though it's pretty expensive and ultra rare card. Next up, we got Dread Charger, and I'll put Dread Charger as a B tier. It's a very useful card, but I would sometimes use maybe Witch Claws or Forsakens for tier 1, and it's hard to decide when I will use the different kind of like units to start from a tier 1. Next is Eliminator, and there's the green and purple affinity. For the green affinity one, when the Eliminator kills enemy units, you're able to heal some of your friendly units. So I think because just based on its healing advantages, I will give this a B tier. And for the purple affinity, when the Eliminator kills enemy unit, it will refund power from the void power pool back to you, about 12% at upgrade 3. So I think it's also fairly useful if you are in a pinch to get back void power. So I would say that Eliminator has been getting quite a bit of buffs. Its stats has been improved. It's a tier 3 unit and it's a large unit. So I have played it in my tier 3 Shadow deck and it has been very fun. A pretty decent card to use, and I'll put it as a B tier. This is Embalmer Shrine. I'll put it as a A tier, solely because that if you don't use any cards, which is highly unlikely, that requires you to have a sort of an advantage in this like gathering of the corpse, then it is not needed. But most of the time you would have some form of gameplay where you have Shadow Phoenix or Furnace of Flesh, which this would help you give an advantage, or even your Devourer when it gets corpse. Since the Embalmer Shrine buffs the corpse gathered, it will require fewer of the enemy units or even your friendly units for your Devourer to get its max corpse gathering, and is able to use its ability. So Embalmer Shrine, I would just say that it's an A tier. Next, Advocator's Vow, D tier straight away, does not have anything to do with PvE. Next is Executor. I would also say D tier. This is a terrible unit to use. Nobody uses this unit at all, or like very rarely. It is very PvP centered for Executor. Next, Fallen Sky Elf, situational. It is mainly used for speed runs where it will cling onto XL boss unit and you can deal more damage to it. But other than that, you won't really use Fallen Sky Elf at all. Next, Forsaken, and I'll give Forsaken an S tier. It's always one of the best tier 1 cards to use. It's a ranged unit. It has Frenzy, which you can just get rid of a lot of enemy units, and if you just want to get like void power or just need your army to die and get up with like your power wells and monument, Forsaken is a pretty good card to use, usually for Shadow tier 1. Frenetic Assault, I will give it I'll still give it A tier. It is a very good card. I remember in the past Frenetic Assault to have a bigger controlling radius, but now it has been reduced a little bit, but it is still a vital card to have if you play pure Shadow, or even if you play a mixed faction deck. It's a very good card to have. Next, Furnace of Flesh, and honestly I would say between A and S tier, but I will put it as S tier. Personally, I will always use Furnace of Flesh to get back my void power. Very fast, very quick and easy way to get power back. Next is Green Bahir, and I would rate both affinities very similar. It is a very cool card to use, very fun card to use. Not say situational, but it is a very versatile card for Shadow decks. Sometimes you might play with mixed faction, and yeah, I'll just give it a B tier because it is quite a versatile card and a fun card to use, very cool card to use. Next we got Harvester, and Harvester I'll put it as a C tier, mainly because it costs so much power for you to summon Harvester, and if you gather a lot of this power in tier 2, probably you won't have any power to summon units with it. And Harvester alone, when faced with an army, even though they are like small or medium units, can take quite a bit of damage. So it is not worth it to have 300 power to summon just one XL unit at tier 2 for campaign PvE. That is the usual case, which is why Harvester I'll put it as a C tier. Next, Incubator, I'll put it the Shadow as a D tier. The Red Affinity I will put it as a C tier, mainly because for the red affinity, you can still control your Mutating Frenzy, and this Mutating Frenzy can gain you ground presence to build something else if you require some form of ground presence. It is quite useful but very situational. Next, in fact, I will put it as a S tier, a vital card to have for you to sort of like get more friendly Nightcrawlers around to distract enemy units, sort of like divert damage towards Nightcrawlers instead of your main army. Very useful card to have, and with Nightcrawler Frenzy activated, they do a big ton of damage. Next, Infernal Chain. I'll honestly put it as a C tier for both affinity, mainly because even after using 100 power to grant your unit this ability to sort of like have some connection with your enemy unit, and enemy unit loses life points while your friend unit gains life points, it still requires power for the ability to activate. And at this point, at tier 4, life point reduction and life point gain wouldn't matter as much, and you have better healing spells like blood healing. It will heal better over a large group rather than a singular targeted heal for your specific unit. Therefore, I will put it as a C tier. Next, Knight of Chaos. The purple affinity Knight of Chaos basically confuses all of the units, and they will not be able to distinguish friends and foe, which is like Frenetic Assault, while the blue affinity one just makes everyone within the radius of your Knight of Chaos unable to attack. And honestly, I think the unable to attack works better, because if you have your purple affinity one and it kills your Knight of Chaos, the enemy kills your Knight of Chaos, then this Frenetic Assault like aura is gone and everyone would just not be affected anymore. Therefore, the blue affinity just make sure everybody stops attacking. It is much more useful. So C tier for blue affinity Knight of Chaos, and D tier for the purple affinity Knight of Chaos. Next, Life Weaving. A tier, very good card to use, especially if you are tier 3 and you just have a singular unit charging towards the enemy base. Good damage reduction or campaign map mode. Life Weaving is a very good card to have. So A tier for Life Weaving. And next we got Life Stealer. I'll put it as a B tier. A decent tier 1 tower to use. With Face Tower, I also would say that Face Tower is probably a B tier, and the only difference is that Life Stealer does a little bit more damage than Face Tower and knocks back S-size units. But other than that, I feel like the advantages of Face Tower is just its relocation, but we don't really use that a lot in campaign PvE, so both will be B tier. Next we have Motivate, and for Motivate it is an A tier. Usually for Motivate it is very good to use for your tier 1 units where you got summon a lot of like Forsakens, especially Forsakens. I think it's mainly used in that manner, and they will deal so much more damage, like 55% more damage, and that is really an insane amount of damage. Alright, next up we got Mutating Frenzy, and I'll give Mutating Frenzy C tier. Honestly, I think in the beginning I thought that it would be a B tier, but with Eliminator right at tier 3 having quite good stats, I would say that I will use Eliminator a little bit more than Mutating Frenzy. It's only good for Mutating Frenzy. It has become a highly situational card where its ability paired with XL counter is only used for taking down XL units or bosses. Therefore, Mutating Frenzy I would say is a C tier. Nasty Surprise also C tier. Very situated card. I would rarely find opportunities to use it. Next, Necro Blaster, and I'll put these two as a tier for both affinities. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's a tower that is very strong, probably one of the strongest towers in the game, only that it requires corpse gathered to attack. Other than that, it is hands down one of the strongest towers in the game. Therefore, A tier. Next, Necro Fury. And for Necro Fury, I think it would be C tier. Again, a situational card to use. Rarely we will find opportunities to use Necro Fury for defense, because usually for defense we would rely more on towers. Unless this game is probably like a purely defensive game like Defending Hope, then Necro Fury is more used. Alright, next is the Nether Warp, and for Nether Warp, Frost Affinity, D tier. Basically just warps your unit and they will move at walk speed. And for the Green Affinity, I'll put it as a C tier. Usually we won't really use Nether Warps in PvE because it also affects hostile units, and Nether Warp is mainly used for like speed runs where you need to get over obstacles where you might usually not get across like gates and stuff like that. Therefore, Nether Warp should just be the C tier. There's no Shadow Affinity Nether Warp, so I will skip that. Next up, I've got Nightcrawler, and I'll give Nightcrawler a C tier because usually we won't summon Nightcrawlers alone. It's more of a PvP card. Next, you got Night Guard, and now Night Guard, both of them have Swift. So honestly, with both Night Guards having Swift, the only reason why in the past the Green Affinity Night Guard is better is because it has Swift. But since now both Night Guards have Swift, I will put it as a B tier because now it is not as helpful to, there's not many opportunities for you to swap with enemy units to gain great advantage. Therefore, Night Guards have been downgraded. I think previously it was A tier that it can get past or cheese certain campaign PvE maps, but now there's not as many opportunities. Therefore, I think it's a B tier. Right, next you got Nightmare, and for Nightmare I would say that it is a C tier. So what Nightmare does is that it's one of the new Skylords Reborn card. It summons 2 undead horses, and when one of these undead horses explodes, it will kill itself, and any enemy units around the radius where it is being exploded would deal 30% less damage. But honestly, spending 70 power to do something that is temporal, I'm not very sure how I feel about it. I mean, there are options like Snapjaws where you summon it and it can kind of like do its job for its lifetime. The good thing about Nightmare, I guess, is you gain void power. It doesn't eat into your power pool permanently. So other than that, I would still think that it is in the C tier. I won't find many use cases for this. Next is Nox Carrier, and I have changed my perception on this, but the Red Affinity is still a D tier. However, the Shadow Affinity is the one that is pretty good. I will bump it up to like even the B tier. So why this Shadow Affinity Nox Carrier is so amazing is that firstly, it only costs 80 power now to summon, and secondly, this Nox Carrier has contamination and it damages buildings, units, anything around it, power wells and monument, which is also useful for PvE, and this is quite deadly for PvP, and the damage it deals can really just knock down all the walls. Just 80 power, you gain 1 Reaper, which already costs I think about 70 power, and you get to destroy the walls and also enemy units. But it's still a tier 3 card, so I guess by the time when you got tier 3, you probably has better unit to use. But at the same time, I have to give Nox Carrier a praise because this is a card that has gone from so far away. Next, we got Nox Trooper. Is a pretty good card to use but situational, and I don't think it's a bad card, so it's a B tier. Next, Offering, I'll give a D tier for Blue Affinity Offering, and for Green Affinity one, a B tier because sometimes, especially for newer players, you don't have card charges. Offering Green Affinity is one of the vital cards that you will have if you don't have many upgrade tree or many card charges. So yes, B tier. Next, Overlord, I'll give it an A tier. Overlord is one of the cards that I usually have it in my deck, and is the unit that I will place my blood healing on simply because it can regenerate its health when Overlord is attacking enemy units, or even if your friendly units die and it has corpse around, Overlord will heal from it. Next up, Plague. I will also give it an A tier. Very strong spell card, damages units and it spreads and deals quite a bit of damage. So overall, I think Plague is a very good shadow card to have. Next, Spartan Nexus. Honestly, I'll put it as a D tier, even though it could be a C tier, but rarely anyone would have to use it. Next, Resource Booster is a C tier, mainly for speed running maps, or if you want to finish maps quicker and get power, then Resource Booster is usually the one to go, and I'll just give it a C tier. Next, I got Rifle Cultist, and for Rifle Cultist, honestly, I'll bump Rifle Cultist to a B tier because its ability is really strong. The Dark Grenade, it deals a whole lot of damage, and with Unholy Hero, this kills almost any normal unit at all, and it also buildings. Very strong card to have, and it pairs well with the Green Affinity Offering, of course, because it's a tier 4 card to sacrifice, cheapest tier 4 card to sacrifice at 50 power, and you gain charges for the rest of your tier 4 cards. B tier for Rifle Cultist. Next, we got Reaper, and for Reaper is a, I will give you a D tier. Nobody uses Reapers in games usually. Yeah, its damage is quite bad, so nobody will use Reapers. Next, the Centennial, and I put both at a C tier. Okay, come to think about it, I would just put it as a B tier. Because for pure Shadow, this is a very good tier 3 ranged card to use. Yeah, but you hover around a B and the C tier for the Satania. Next up, we got Second Chance. I don't really like using Second Chance. I think it's a high risk card to play. There's many factors that have to be going on in order for this synergy to work. Therefore, with so many factors involved, variables, risk factors, I would just never play this card at all, and I also don't really play Second Chance in any way, so this will be a D tier for both Second Chance. Next will be Shadow Insect, and I'll put Shadow Insect as B tier. Is a very good cheap swift card to have at tier 3. Next got Shadow Mage, and for Shadow Mage I'll put it as a D tier. Nobody would play Shadow Mage in a PvE deck. Alright, next we got Shadow Phoenix, S tier, no explanation needed for me. And Shadow Worm is a C tier. Not because it is useful, but if you just use it as a plain card that attacks units, it's quite a good card to use. But nobody uses its mass disintegration because it's just tough to heal units in a Shadow deck. Of course, it's possible if you continuously like have blood healing or have like skeleton warriors with its unholy armor on, then possible, but nobody really plays it like that. Therefore, it's C tier just because of its stats and how you can probably just play as a normal unit. Next, Shrine of Greed, automatic D tier. Skeleton Warriors, C tier, similar logic to Shadow Worm. Next got Snapjaws, C tier for the Shadow Affinity, but Red Affinity a bit more useful because you want to deal more damage to enemy units. You just mainly want to kill units fast so that your Shadow units don't take as much damage, so that they don't have to be healed. So honestly, for Shadow cards in general, I would prioritize those that helps you deal more damage to enemy units. Next, Soul Splicer, D tier for the Red Affinity and a B tier for Green Affinity, mainly for its healing ability. Next, Soul Shatter, S tier. Soul Shatter, very good card to use. It deals a whole lot of damage, can clear small or even like medium sized enemy bases. Stone of Torment, C tier, situational card. Next, Time Vortex, D tier for the Purple Affinity, because there's so many cards in Shadow where you sort of like get back your void power quickly, and if you have a low void power then this card would not attack quicker, therefore deals fewer damage. But for the Blue Affinity one, it's an A tier. You always want to have your void power very low for Shadow cards because there is like Furnace of Flesh. There's many ways for you to get back void power, and you need a constant power in your power pool to summon more units so that you are able to like push the map quicker and just get the campaign map done and over with. A tier for Time Vortex, the Frost Affinity one. And then Army, C tier, situational. And Holy Hero, B tier. It can be very strong if you are gone for a single unit attack. Next, Unholy Power, I will also put it as a B tier. Unstable Demon, I'll put it as a C tier now because there is Eliminator, which works so much better than Unstable Demon. Next, got Void Maw, also C tier, highly situational card. Void Storm, D tier. Witch Claws, I prefer the Fire Affinity more, that's why I never play the Shadow Affinity. Therefore, Witch Claws, Shadow Affinity, D tier. And for the Fire Affinity one, similar to Dread Charger where I will have to decide which one to play. So it's similar logic to that, and it's a B tier. Wrath Blades, C tier. And Wrath Gazer, I'll give it a D tier. So yeah, this is my final tier list for Shadow PvE decks 2026. Let me know what you think of this and what you think should be ranked higher or lower. I'm very interested to hear your opinions. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys again real soon for my next video.